Network's meetings. We will be recording this hui tonight, so uh, if you do not wish to be recorded, I suggest you turn your camera off. But feel free to turn your camera on. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we'll open up a Q and answer session at the end of this. Would like to give a shout out to Amy and to Jen and Liz and the team who have gone out of their way to organise this series for the last couple of months. Oh, actually, it's probably longer than that now. And it's been thoroughly enjoyable. I think we've all learnt a lot about the volunteer sector in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and what the wonderful wahine across the motu are up to. So it's been fantastic to be able to share our experiences as well as to hear the experiences of those in other organisations and other volunteers around the country. So I think what we'll do tonight is we've got a couple of guest speakers. You guys have heard me speak before, so we'll save some of that in the questions. And we will open up with a karakia. So Janelle, would you like to open us up?
Yeah, kia ora everybody. I'm going to do the Rapatai Whenua, New Zealand Land Search and Rescue karakia. It's a relatively new initiative for a range of purposes, hui, but also for operational context. So, tākina mai toruwha, tākina mai tamari ki ranganui, tākina mai tamari ki papatua anuku, kia tau tamari ki ngā tangata o Rapatai Whenua. Kia homaru nā hoa, kia homaru nā kaimahi. Hei awhina, hei maratau, ia hau. I tēnei mahi whakahirahira, tūtara whakamoa, kia tina, huie, tai kia. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Janelle. I have just pushed the next slide, so we'll see if my computer has just decided to freeze. That's well timed. Excellent. Stand by, everybody. It was working not too long ago, so we'll try again. There we go. Just needed a bit of a reset. So tonight we have with us, obviously, Janelle Mackie, who has just introduced our karakia. She'll be giving us a bit of a rundown on Land Search and Rescue, who we are, and just some of our statistics, particularly around that gender and diversity space. We've also got Jolie Hazley, so she's with the Southland Land Search and Rescue team. We've got Ellie Arntz, and she's with the Wanganui Land Search and Rescue team. And if we have time, you guys can hear from me, but the ladies prior to me are far more interesting and far more experienced. So what I'll do now is I'll hand over to our lovely wahine, Janelle.
Kia ora, thanks, Ellie. So yeah, I'm not a volunteer with Rapatai Whenua. I work for the national support team, but I've changed roles recently from learning development manager and transitioning into a new role for the organisation, which is the national response advisor, which is looking at how Rapatai Whenua can be better positioned to support wider emergency responses around the motu. So yeah, exciting role that I'm looking to forward to getting into, but I feel a little bit like I can speak in this forum from volunteering. I think I'm one of those lifers or recidivist volunteers. Started, I must have been 5 or something, but I started a Red Cross just out of university. Was involved with response teams and New Zealand urban search and rescue dogs. So as well as that, I've had a career with Canterbury Civil Defence Emergency Management Group until I joined Rapatai Whenua almost 2 years ago now. So Ellie just asked me, well, and anyone who knows Ellie was more of a voluntolding, that to just do a wee bit of an introduction to the organisation. So if you flick over to the next slide, Ellie.
stand by. We're just having some technical difficulties.
I saw that, Liz. Great.
Okay.
Yeah, so New Zealand Land Search and Rescue is absolutely a volunteer-centric organisation. We've got volunteers in 63 groups spread throughout Aotearoa, New Zealand. And you can see the little map there, and the little squares represent our New Zealand Land Search and Rescue groups. As well as the geographically based ones, we have 11 specialist teams. CAVESAR search dogs in the wilderness space, Alpine Cliff Rescue or ACR, Canyon SAR and River SAR. So yeah, they're specialist groups that are over top of our geographically spread volunteer-based groups. So just I picked up some operational statistics from the last sort of June to June year, just to give people an idea of the amount of mahi that goes on by the organisation by our volunteers. So 492 operations, and it's not hard to work out, that's more than one per day, with 185 people assisted and 198 rescued. Lives saved estimated to be 40. So that's a significant contribution to our emergency response in New Zealand, and something the volunteers and the organisation should be incredibly proud of. At a higher level than they talk about this return on investment idea, which is basically saying the amount of voluntary contribution is made by New Zealand Land Search and Rescue volunteers is significant, and every hour given is worth a lot in terms of New Zealand Inc.'s whole value as an ecosystem or as an emergency management response. So as well as the operational stuff, there's all the other things that happen in the background. So if you flick on to the next one, Ali, just to give you an idea of the amount of work which is done by our volunteers. In that 12-month period, it was 188,857 hours. That's probably an underestimation. I'm sure there's more that gets done, but that's what is logged. So that is a huge amount. Large amount on training, and that's the area that I was involved with until relatively recently. Huge amount on operations, 24,000 hours on operations, and some other areas that you'll see on there. We are looking where we have got opportunities in that prevention space, and probably see more in that as things go on. Click on. So I just thought I would pull the slides. Certainly Ali, one of the latest speakers, is on something which is called our diversity inclusivity advisory group, which reports directly to the board of New Zealand Land Search and Rescue. But just a couple of stats. So yeah, we're certainly not 50-50, but what I like to see is the trend, right? And so our new recruits in the last year should be helping to redress some of that balance. And when you look at the trend data over the last 10 years or so, certainly we're seeing an increase in the number of women who are volunteering to be part of New Zealand Land Search and Rescue. I know there's a real conscious effort by those who do our social media and our marketing and things to sort of try and show that image that females play a really integral and important part in New Zealand Land Search and Rescue. So you're I don't know if we're misrepresented or overrepresented on the social media posts and marketing materials, but I really hope so. But it's certainly something I noticed from within the organisation is a real attempt to personify women as a really important part of what we do. Also dug down a little bit further into the statistics of not only are women increasingly being seen in the organisation, but actually being seen in key roles. So this statistic shows females only come through and being seen on their group committees, and we're up to almost a quarter of our groups having a female chair. Interestingly, relatively recently, our overall New Zealand Land Search and Rescue Board has had its first female chair, and we also have a female deputy chair of the board of New Zealand Land Search and Rescue. So I'm not going to say anything more on that. I'll let Ali add any additional comment on the Inclusivity Advisory Group if she wants to, and I'll hand over to Jolie.
Cool. Yeah, kia ora. I'm Jolie Hazley. I'm from Southland, LandSAR down in the mighty south of Invercargill, and kind of still need these jerseys on because it's still quite wintry down here, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm a search for LandSAR, but I guess more importantly, I'm a mother, a wife with a hugely supportive husband that lets me do all my activities. And I've got my two wonderful children that hopefully will not be interrupting us tonight, that like to get out in the outdoors. And I'm also a Highland dancing teacher. So as another hobby, other than my day job, I also teach about 20 Highland dancers down here in Invercargill and on several different committees across Southland and help out even nationally, and organise lots of competitions. So that's kind of my hobbies and me. So next slide is my day job. So my day job is I'm a biosecurity pest plants team lead at our regional council down here. So my day job doesn't get enough field work anymore. But yeah, pretty much searching for plants in beautiful wilderness, like these pictures here, is what my job is. So I guess, yeah, I'm kind of telling you these stories to see how search and rescue intertwines through lots of my life. But yes, so having to look out, having ID skills for plants, looking at all the different textures, the different shades, tiny seed heads, tiny flowers, everything like that, searching from the ground, and also eerily all the time in my day job really helps out with LandSAR activities and that as well as all the health and safety in collaboration with agencies that I have to do. Ellie, next one. Yeah, and before that, I spent 17 years, I think it was, with Department of Conservation down here, also chasing weeds, searching for weeds, but yeah, spending hours and hours and hours searching for a weed called Spartina, which you probably cannot see, but I can see in the middle of that picture, out in the estuaries around Southland. It is a grass that hides with other grasses. So really having that ID skills of trying to distinguish all of those, but I think it's also those hours of searching and finding nothing, kind of helps with the LandSAR side of things as well. And it was also through Land Search and Rescue dog team that I convinced them, one of the handlers, that they should get a biosecurity dog and actually start sniffing out this grass called Spartina. And that has been a huge asset to the Spartina eradication program down here in Southland, but also now nationally, as those dogs are being used through New Zealand. So yeah, how work can intertwine into LandSAR activities as well. And I guess before that, next slide, Ellie, I used to work on the Milford track in the mighty Fiordland National Park. Spent 5 years in there guiding and hut wardening. And I could see everything along the way, from trampers who had suitcases on wheels trying to walk the Milford track, to trampers trying to go over McKinnon Pass without raincoats and demanding my raincoat and telling me to stay in the hut for the week, to having annual, if it is Fiordland, where the annual rainfall is around 8 metres of rain a year, and having seen rainfall events of over 500 mils within a couple of days. So really all those weather extremes. As well as my favourite tramper, Mr. Jack Hoffman, at 250 kilos, that I found on the side of the track on New Year's Eve. So I guess, yeah, all of those experiences kind of helped me in my LandSAR journey, as well as my whole childhood, from pretty much when I could walk up into my 20s, hunting all across Southland and also the west coast of New Zealand with my dad. So that was kind of, I guess, my childhood and my life of work, which has kind of had SAR intertwined for most of it. So to get onto the SAR story, I put it all down to my dad. So Cyril, so he was involved in search and rescue for a very long time as well. I'm not sure how many years, but lots. And as a child, I was always intrigued by all the stories I would hear of him going out and being slung under helicopters and everything like that over on Stewart Island, searching for all these people. And it was, I don't know, all those stories just seemed so exciting, and was always intrigued when he went on a search to find out what was happening. So that's kind of how I got into LandSAR, was because my dad, he put restrictions on it. I had to be 18 before I was allowed to go on my first search with him, which in hindsight was very wise of him, because it was on my first search that I actually found the patient deceased, unfortunately. So yeah, it was kind of a realization of it's not just all fun flying around in helicopters and bits and pieces. And I'll kind of talk about that search a little bit later on as a female, and what they thought my role should be, as such. So yeah, but yeah, I went on quite a few searches with my dad for many years. Some of the memorable ones were, I mean, being flown by helicopter over to Rakiura, Stewart Island, onto a offshore island, being having to skid hop off onto rocks while holding a box of pizza, because that was the food that the police decided to supply. The helicopter flying away, and sitting there with my dad and another guy going, well, what do we do now? Because we can't carry pizza around the island. So we pretty much had to scoff it all there and there for the day. But yeah, had some really cool searches with him. One of the other ones that I thought was memorable was his the search where he's in a search gear there in that picture, which is up the Dunsdale. We were looking for someone that said they had gone fishing, but really they were just going to see how their weed plots were, and had got lost. But on that search, it was an area that Dad was very familiar with, and he actually had a hut built on private land up there. And once the search was over, we had to walk out, and so we stopped in at the hut on the way home, had several whiskies, hoping that someone would come pick us up, and they never did. So yeah, we had to walk all the way back, and it was only just before we got to the hut that they realized we were missing. But it's okay, because we'd had a great time debriefing on the way home from the search. But I guess, yeah, LandSAR is also really important to me because of Dad, because back in 2008, he became the lost party. And so the call was put out, and it is one of the bigger searches I must say that I was involved in, with everyone coming from everywhere. Really awesome response, really fast response. And the next morning, Dad was found, unfortunately deceased. He had fallen from a cliff all out hunting. So he was out hunting with his friend. They went separate directions, and he happened to fall down a cliff and die instantly from neck injuries and bits and pieces. But it was because of the LandSAR team that were there that found him and was able to bring us home. And I guess that was one of the learnings that I've also put across many times to searchers, is as a family, we assumed that he had had a medical event, and it wasn't until we had to ID the body that we realized it wasn't a medical event. And so I guess that's one of my things I always try and put across to, if we are in those situations, is to try and get the message through to the family before they do the IDs of what they might be facing, because it isn't all that nice seeing your loved one in any situation like that, let alone after, that. Sorry, still miss him very, very much, even though it's been a number of years now. But the really cool thing about this search was, quite a few months later, probably 6 months later, I was still really unsettled about the situation. And so the volunteers were amazing, and they actually took me out and to the site. And as soon as I got to the site with the searchers, we actually found his wallet, which had been missing. Didn't really need the wallet for the money, it was just more where it was. But the searchers took me back there, and it was really special because just by taking me back there, I had instant closure. I knew what had happened to Dad, and yeah, I was able to, I guess, grieve. So it was kind of that effort of above and beyond that those searchers went to make sure that the family was still, settling and grieving many months later, which was really awesome. And as a family, we are forever grateful to the searchers that dropped everything, that went out there and found Dad and brought him back to us, because unfortunately, that does not always happen on all of our searches. We are not always able to bring that story back. But it has also given me a new appreciation for when I go on searches of knowing what both sides is like, the stress, the worry, but also that huge amount of appreciation and just, yeah, the effort that goes into it. So yeah, that was my dad and that story. But continuing on, trying to put the happy face back on. So yeah, I have been volunteering now on and off for 24 years as life allows. Of course, I've had a bit of travel, had some babies, had kids, bits and pieces like that in between, and I just haven't always been able to go on them. But yeah, just lots of different searches I've been involved in over the years. So we've had hunters and campers in the bush. We do fishermen's lost at sea, so doing shoreline searches. Yeah, just trampers out in the mountains in the snow. We've had quite a few autistic children that we've helped out, dementia patients, mental health related incidences, and we've also been involved in a couple of criminal investigations down here. One where I didn't go out searching on it, but yeah, our team actually helped lead to a criminal conviction by just finding the evidence, which the police then could follow up on. But yeah, I guess using lots of fun, I guess, over the years with using helicopters, doing stupid things, jumping out of them, winches, all of that kind of stuff over the years. The stories where you take a two-man tent and then there's suddenly three of you in it. Being left out in the field, as I discussed before. A search I was on, we were looking for an elderly man and we found a young child in the middle of the search, and was able to get that child back to its family. And then we do have the unsolved cases as well, where we haven't been able to solve them. And I've actually been involved in private searches as well after the police and LandSAR have kind of finished the search. I have been contacted to go out on private searches through the local helicopter pilots who knew I was involved in LandSAR, just to fill an extra seat and help out there. So it's kind of, yeah, lots of different adventures and bits and pieces there. And the next slide is, yeah, so why do I do LandSAR? Lots of reasons. I guess I'm always conscious that I like going tramping and I like going out in the outdoors, and one day I might need help. So I kind of have the theory of, if I pay it forward now, hopefully someone will come look for me and find me, and then I will be harassed for the rest of my life about it, but that's okay. But I guess it is that fun, that adventure, the unknown. You know, if you get the phone call, you don't know where you're going. You're heading somewhere in Fieldland, you don't get a map. You often just make it up as you go, which is quite nice, because whenever I go tramping, everything is planned out meticulously. So to go out into the unknown and make it up as you go on the fly is actually quite a nice change. Get to go lots of new places you'd never be able to go. Some mutton bird islands down in Stewart Island. Public aren't allowed there, but because of LandSAR, I've been able to have the opportunity to go down there. But I guess, yeah, this slide here is the big one: hurry up and wait. That is a key motto at LandSAR that is not promoted, but it is a major thing that we do, and that is hurry up and wait. So one of those pictures, the picture there at the hut, is us the next morning after a search. We had driven for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours into Milford to walk a total of 5 or 6 steps before the helicopter found the person. And then we went to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, got up the next morning, and with the new health and safety and fatigue policies that LandSAR have in place, we had to sit around debriefing and yarning until we were allowed to safely drive home 8 hours later. So that was us the next morning. But yeah, it is a lot of, you get the call out, you run around your house like a mad person, picking everything up, throwing your gear in, and then getting somewhere and sitting and waiting for an hour to be tasked while the amazing incident management team are doing all the planning. And yeah, just that photo from the helicopter, just the fun adventures of where you're going to go using boats. using helicopters, using Argos, using quad bikes, using four-wheel drives. Yeah, lots of fun adventures along the way. But yeah, in the 24 years, Ali can change. In the 24 years that I've been doing it, I guess I've seen lots of changes over time. My first search when I was 18, we used hip chains. Don't know if anyone knows what I mean, but they're cotton, a little reel of cotton literally on your hips, on your belt, and you walk along and you leave this cotton trail as you go, and that is your method of marking where you are, so that when you turned around, because we were doing purposeful wander or kind of a grid search, you were not researching the area that you'd done. So using hip chains, because we didn't have GPSs. They were just non-existent back in 2000 when I started. So yeah, we didn't have the GPSs. And on that first search, even though I was involved as a searcher, as soon as we found the person, we actually had family members in our search team, and the police delegated my role as an 18-year-old female was to console the family, which is not me. I am not one of those kind of console the family type people, and at 18 I definitely did not have the skills for that, but that was what they thought I should be there for. I resisted and hopped on the stretcher and just muscled it out with the guys and really proved myself. But yeah, that was kind of how things were, I guess, back then. And I don't even remember any females on those first few years of searching. It was just me. And I guess it was probably because my dad was there, they kind of just accepted me. I don't know. We can have a wee bit of redneck Southlanders down here sometimes, but I don't know. I never saw it as an issue, but it probably was. I just was naive enough or just didn't care enough to care. But I guess the big thing is, yeah, own equipment. We didn't get fancy jackets. We didn't get raincoats. We didn't get anything. Back in the day, it was just our own personal gear that we were using and buying. And the photo there from my younger days was just, yeah, I would just try and buy orange clothes to make it look like I was part of the team, and bits and pieces. Whereas things has really changed. It's really awesome now. We get uniform, which really helps with that team bonding side of things, and it's just really nice when, like, I love this jacket, but just yeah, you're not having to spend hundreds, because to be honest, every birthday, every Christmas, I would get money and I always would save that money and use it to buy more equipment that I could use, one for tramping, but mainly with LandSAR in the back of my mind, trying to make my pack lighter as I got more unfit. So yeah, but what I love about LandSAR is the training is amazing. As I kind of talked about in my previous life, with all the searching, not previous life, my current other life, the worky one, I use a lot of the SAR techniques all the way through my personal life as well as in LandSAR. And yeah, just the technology changes. Having an online meeting, this is exciting. All those technology changes with drones and, I don't know, SAR track, everything. You get tracked everything you do now, which is pretty cool. But yeah, one thing that hasn't changed is New Zealand weather, or Southland weather. So yeah. Cool. And then, yeah, so returning loved ones to the family is the main reason that I do search and rescue, as well as all the fun and adventure, bringing closure to families. I know how important it is to bring a story back, even if it is not a positive story. If they can have a story, it really does bring you peace. And so this was a year later after Dad's search. We went back up to the site and went out just on dusk and shot a deer. And this is us having to retrieve it in the dark because we had to walk back and get a truck to carry it out in bits and pieces. But yeah, just it is, you know, life carries on without my amazing dad, which we do miss lots, but it is for the family that we do it. And in saying that, I volunteer, but my whole entire family and extended family volunteer as well, because I get a call out, I drop everything. It's my husband, it's my kids, it's the grandparents that pick up the pieces, I guess, when I disappear. So yeah. And next slide is the LandSAR family, the whānau, This is my amazing team down here in Southland. In the last couple of years, we've done some amazing things with the help of Ellie Curd as well. And we've got this amazing team, which has lots of wahine in it. So I'm no longer the sole female here in our team. And yeah, everyone's got your back. It's really awesome. So that's my LandSAR story, I guess. Yeah. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Jolie. It's yeah, I've had the privilege of being in a part of the Southland team for a number of years, and I think when I joined, it was only Jolie was the only other female there. So things have come a long way in the last 7 years, which is just amazing to see. And I think Jolie's story is there's so much to it because she was there, you know, back when things were a little bit more cowboy, and she's come through all those changes and she's stuck with it, and she's been an amazing example for the wahine in Southland and for the wahine in Land Search and Rescue. So it's really great that she's here tonight to share her story. So thanks, Jolie. And up next we have Ellie Arndt. So Ellie is one of those, was it 24%? So she's actually the current chair of the Wanganui group. So she's got a lot of experience as well. She's also part of that inclusivity and diversity advisory group. So I'll hand it over to you, Ellie.
Thanks, Ellie. It's a little bit confusing having two Ellie. Sorry, I don't have a number of nice pictures like the last bit, so you'll just have to look at the words and listen to me talk. But thanks for inviting me along tonight. So I'm a bit newer into Land Search and Rescue. I guess going back to my background, I came from a family that wasn't very sporty or active. But sort of once I separated from my children's father in 2013, I kind of went out into the hills and made up for that by tramping as much as I could cram into every second weekend, and really got a love for sort of being out in the hills and adventuring, and acquired a lot of skills just through trial and error. And then through an acquaintance, in 2017, I came across Land Search and Rescue, and I had been volunteering for another organisation, but was sort of looking for something a bit more community focused and where I could really sort of help and make a difference. So yeah, went along to the local group, and they were pretty welcoming. The recruitment officer at the time was sort of ahead of his time, I guess, a little bit in some ways, and very encouraging of women and women in leadership. And so my experience with the local group was really positive. As you find out when you join things like Land Search and Rescue, if you're a bit of a doer, you very quickly end up with jobs. So I think I'd been in for about 12 months when I was asked to be the training coordinator. So I took on that for a year. A year later, I was in the secretary role, and then the next AGM, the current chair resigned, and I found myself as the chair. And I felt like I was floundering and totally out of my depth. Fortunately, LandSAR started a new leadership program that year as well, called LandSAR. And I was lucky enough to get onto that program. And through sort of 2 years of mentoring and working through that program, I really felt like I gained a lot of skills and have a lot more confidence, and no longer feel like I don't know what I'm doing. So I guess for me, my roles in LandSAR, I feel like I've got two quite distinct parts that I play. I have quite a lot of governance work that I do, and I'm also heavily involved in the field team side of things. So I'm field team member and also a field team leader for the Wanganui group. When I first joined, I'm quite a small female, and there was no equipment available for small people or females. So I used to complain on a very regular basis about the lack of adequate gear that would fit me. And it's been really pleasing to see over the last 7 years, you know, when people join up now, there's gear for everyone, there's gear for every size, there's gear cut specifically for women. And that has been a sort of a general trend in land search and rescue in general over the last probably 5 or 6 years. Part of that, a few years ago now, there were sort of some volunteer surveys done and concerns highlighted, I guess, around the lack of gender diversity, or the ways that just different processes that were quite exclusive to women, purely arising, I guess, from the history of where land search and rescue has come from, which for those of you that aren't aware, it kind of came from a tramping club, sort of more what we call an old boys background, and you know, those things have carried through for I guess close to 85, 90 years, and it's only recently that we've really started to see changes in those trends. So we commissioned a study a few years ago now, looking at what were the issues in gender diversity and ethnic diversity, and from that came up with some sort of key areas of things to work on within the organisation. That group is now known as the Inclusivity Advisory Group. We have recently presented a inclusivity and diversity strategy to the New Zealand Search and Rescue Land Search and Rescue Board, which they have adopted. So that's been a huge step for volunteer organisation to really put emphasis on how important gender diversity is within the organisation. From there, we're currently working through a work plan, and I believe that this will be part of a future discussion that we will have on this forum, probably within the next 6 months or so. But we're looking at areas of how do we promote, like how do we have representatives within the organisation who promote women in land search and rescue. How do we create networks that encourage women to feel like they can be in leadership roles, be in governance roles? Diversity even amongst the tutors, so the people that are taking the courses, so that there's a whole range of different mindsets. And we know that if we have diversity within our IMT and our field teams, that we end up with better search outcomes, because we have better ideas, we have different ways of looking at things, we can, you know, come up with different solutions that we don't have if we just all think the same way. Yeah, I could probably go on about it for quite a while. I do kind of joke our local group isn't actually that diverse, because we have a female chair, a female secretary, and a female treasurer. But you know, even in our local region, we now have, I think, 4 female chairs. So I'd say that diversity within our area, which is kind of the lower and central North Island, is definitely trending towards having more women. I'm, like I said previously, very lucky within our group. I haven't experienced any sort of any sort of negative things towards me for being female. We've had 3 new SAR babies in our group this year, and 2 of those are 2 female SAR members. And probably one big thing I forgot to mention was that I'm a solo mum. Well, I was a solo mum for a very long time. And initially I did have one of the police officers tell me that I probably couldn't do land search and rescue because I was a solo mum. And I thought, wow, look, I'll just show you what I can do then. And here we are 7 years later. But like Jolly said, you know, family plays a huge part in that. And I'm always conscious of thanking not only our members, but also their whānau, because without the whole collective community behind our searches, we just can't go out there and deliver the outcomes that we need for lost parties and their families as well. I think that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Ellie. I'm sure there'll be some questions at the end. And it's really nice getting your perspective as being part of that inclusivity group. You've done, I know that group has done a lot of work in the past 3 years, and the progress that we have seen as volunteers and as members, particularly as women, has really started to shine through. So I think it is starting to trickle down into those local groups. So it's quite refreshing, particularly those of us who have been part of groups that maybe haven't been as open to some of that diversity of thought. So it's really great to have you on board and advocating for that, and that the group is still going strong 3 years later. So lots of changes within search and rescue. So thank you for that. We do have a little bit, so I'll we're going to play this game again, are we? I'll talk
just
a little
while
bit.
you're doing that, there's a great comment, Ellie, in the chat from Liz. No better motivation than someone telling you can't do something.
That's right.
Very true. Cool. All right. So you guys have heard me speak previously, but I suppose that was probably more about the organisation. So my name is Ellie Curd, and I am part of the Ruapehu Alpine Rescue Organisation. Prior to being part of RARO, I was with the Southland Land Search and Rescue Group, and prior to that, I was with the Nelson Land Search and Rescue Group. I work in emergency management, so hence why I have moved around quite a bit. So I have been part of land search and rescue for the last 7 years. I moved back to New Zealand in 2017, and I got roped into joining the local team. But it's something that had always interested me. And just like Jolie, it was my family that got me into land search and rescue. My dad used to be part of the Waitomo team up in the King Country, and very similar. He would have to drop everything in the middle of the night, and then you'd see him a couple of days later and he'd come back with these amazing stories. And I just thought, wow, that's such a neat thing to do. And as I got older, he would take me out into the bush and would go hunting, and he would help me identify the different plants and the different natives and the medicinal values of them as well, which was really, really interesting. I then went away. I left New Zealand for 10, 12 years. And when I came back, I was approached to join the incident management team. By then, I was doing my master's in emergency management. And of course, part of that is the coordinated incident management team. And they said, oh, look, you'd be a great fit for land search and rescue. And I was quite surprised because I thought that land search and rescue was just for men. So when I turned up to the first training and there were women there, I thought, wow, this is pretty neat. I then found out that women could be field team members. So I was like, yep, no, that's for me. I do incident management as my day job. So I want to be in the field where I can. So I became a field team member. I then became a field team leader. And as I got more involved in the group, I became a committee member as well. And I'm currently a probationary Alpine Rescue team member. I don't have all of my Alpine skills ticked off yet. So I work in the incident management team up in National Park when we have call outs there. And I'm also a trainer with Land Search and Rescue and an evaluator with New Zealand Search and Rescue. So through my journey as a volunteer, I've been very fortunate to be offered other roles within Land Search and Rescue and within the search and rescue sector. And I am forever grateful with it, because not only does it allow me to upskill in my job and emergency management, it provides that diversity of thought, a lot more around connections within the organisation, but also the ability to keep in touch with other volunteers, and knowing that particularly through being a trainer, is when I turn up to a SAR job which is in another region, I know chances are you're going to know the people. Chances are you know that they have the same training as you, and you know that they've got your back, and that's where that camaraderie really does come in. I was the same as Ali when I first joined Search and Rescue. None of the equipment fit me. And I remember being in Southland one day in one of our searches, and Jolie and I actually turned up to the search together. And there was one small jacket, which was a male small, and it was way too big on both of us. But because there was only one, we had to decide who was going to get the small jacket and who was going to get the next size up, which was swimming on both of us. And then you fast forward to today, and most of us have our own kit as a result of a lot of the funding that has gone into Land Search and Rescue. And so it's just really nice having your own gear, and gear that is fit for purpose, and knowing that you covered both figuratively and literally. And I suppose lastly, the reason that I joined Search and Rescue was obviously for the reasons I've just mentioned, but I think majority of my searches in my career have actually resulted in deceased. And I think once you get over that initial shock of it, it's a really nice feeling being able to bring closure to a family, and being able to bring their loved ones home. And as difficult as it is, because we have people of all ages. I think one that we had recently was a 17-year-old girl, and that's always heartbreaking when you're carrying a body bag of someone who's just so young. But it was also really reassuring that we were able to bring her back to her family, and they were able to say goodbye to her in a dignified way. So there's a lot that goes into it, and having a fantastic team around you definitely goes back to the family and the family support. I'm very lucky that I have a partner who is also part of Search and Rescue, so he certainly understands what we go through, and we're quite often debriefed together if we're on different searches. So it's really nice to just have that support from friends and whānau with it. So I think we'll wrap that up there. We'll move on to a question and answer session. So what are your questions? I don't have the chat on me. So if there is anything in the chat, I'm going to have to get either Amy or Janelle to look at that. But tell us your questions.
There's not so many questions. There's lots of nice comments for the speakers, which is great. We'll give them a couple of minutes, see if any questions come up.
I was just going to say, it might be worth mentioning too that alongside whānau support, we also now in Land Search and Rescue have access to full sort of wellbeing support, which not only applies to searchers but also any other aspect of our lives, and a whole new peer support programs, which is both sort of fairly new in the last 2 to 3 years.
Excellent. So we must have done a good job at presenting some of our stories if there's no questions.
Michelle has her hand up.
Yeah.
Oh, Okay, sorry, I can't see, so I might get someone else to do the go ahead.
I guess I'd like to pose this to all of you. So look, if you were looking ahead, where do you see what are your hopes now, given that all you've achieved and the changes for women in LandSAR? What's next? What's the future? Where would you like to see the future of women in LandSAR?
I guess I might speak. I guess I often, probably because I've been a female, and just it's often we just want the best people. You know, they can be female, they can be gender diverse, they can be any shape, color. It's just getting the best people out there. Is on the team is probably what I always strive for, and bits and pieces like that. So I guess and I think that big thing is just feeling like one of the family, being one of the whānau, everyone having your back. And I think we're really, really getting there. And that's something I've noticed over the years. Instead of being seen as different, we're just accepting. And I think a lot of it goes down to the guys in our team. They accept me for who I am. They don't care what body parts I have or anything like that. They just see me as a searcher. So that's probably keeping that up and getting that nationally would be, I think, something I'd like.
Thank you.
I think for me, it's that diversity of thought. I personally would like to see a lot more women within land search and rescue, purely for that diversity of thought. I also, in my experience, and again, a lot of that comes back to my experience with Jolie, because she's one of the first female searchers that I had the privilege of working with. And I found because we are women, we see things very differently. And we also, it's a scientific fact that we have a larger visual scale. So when it comes to search and rescue, that's extremely valuable. And so by having more females within some of the search teams, it means that there's the ability that they'll be able to pick up on aspects which perhaps others wouldn't. And I think that there's been a lot more acceptance of women within land search and rescue, and it's certainly testament to the numbers that Janelle was showing, and we are seeing a steady increase. We also, I feel that we need to look more at the retention aspect of women, because yes, we have more joining, but how many of them are actually being retained, and how many of them are actually finding that they're not having the support, maybe through our friends and whānau, to actually stay within the organisation and stay volunteering. Also, we certainly recognise that, throughout the different life stages, women will come and go. And again, using Jolie's example of, there were times where she was pregnant, so she stood back for maybe a year, and then she came back in. So how do we encourage people to come back after they have gone off to have families, and how do we support them with that transition back into land search and rescue?
Thank you.
Liz has got a question as well.
I've got lots of questions, but I'll ask just a couple of them. So a lot of our organisations face similar challenges. It's cool to see that you're kind of growing from 30%-ish female to hopefully 50% in the future. One of the challenges that we're looking at is ethnic diversity as well, so that we're actually representative of Aotearoa's ethnic statistics. So we're looking at ways that we can recruit other people to reflect better our community, in the different perspectives and skills and languages that they bring. I'm wanting to know what you guys are doing in that space, and I'll slip a second question there about what's volunteer recognition like in your organisation as well. Thanks.
I can probably talk a little bit to that, Liz. So I guess we have looked at it as part of the diversity and inclusivity piece. We haven't done a lot of work in there. There's kind of two ways of looking at ethnic diversity. So one is, do we have diversity that represents our entire community across the country, or do we have ethnic diversity that's sort of relevant for the community that we live in? Because obviously some communities are going to be really high Indian population, whereas for other communities there's zero Indian. And I mean, we haven't done a lot of work in that space yet. It is on the back burner. We're very mindful of not box ticking. So as as in, we don't want to just have the one token this and the one token gesture that. And so it is. We haven't done. I'm going to say we haven't done a lot of work in it. As far as improving inclusivity in the Te Reo Māori tikanga space, we do have a lead for that, and we have been running programs initially for staff and now for volunteers, sort of in improving cultural practice and that sort of thing, which you saw, I guess, with one of the pieces was the karakia, which Janelle said at the start of the evening. I don't know if that kind of answers your question. It's tricky, yeah.
Do either any of you guys want to comment on that whole volunteer recognition piece?
I guess a couple of years ago, well, before years ago, I got a 20-year certificate for my service, and it was really, really, really special. I've got it even up in there. Well, it used to be in the dance studio, but it's in the lounge at the moment. Just getting that recognition, because I don't do it for recognition. I don't do it to be thanked by the families afterwards, but it was actually really special getting that recognition. And so even just a small piece of paper can go a long way. But I think that is the thing as a volunteer. Most of us, if you're here for recognition and to be thanked, you're probably in the wrong group, because sometimes you don't get thanked because the people aren't grateful for the effort you have put in. But I think as a team, we're all really, really thankful. And I know even this year we're doing some cool certificates just for participation and just for the values that everyone brings in such a different way. From bringing the chocolates to every INT incident, or just rocking up with a positive attitude. So, yeah.
We need a group volunteer support person here. There's other sort of formal ways that nationally recognise people as well, and then obviously sort of what Jolie's speaking in local groups, different things. In our group, we sort of appointed some honorary life members, and every year at the AGM we try to recognise the 5, 10, 15, 20 year or more, some of them, service awards just on a local level. But then they do have sort of volunteer of the year, new volunteer of the year, all those sorts of awards, usually annually at the National Hui.
Thanks, team. Any other questions from the peeps online? Because I'll just answer a couple of the ones in the chat. In regards to other roles for people who do not have physical ability to go into the field, yeah, definitely. We've got roles for everybody in land search and rescue. We have quite a few people who would like to join the incident management team. We also have people who are there to be, because we do have a fatigue policy. And so having drivers who are able to go and pick up searches at the end of a search and bring them back to back home, that's certainly a role that we're looking into in some of more remote communities. And then sometimes it's just, staying at base or at the forward base and been able to offer the searchers food and refreshments when they come out of the field or back into the field, to just, you know, helping us plan with some of our logistics and trainings, or turning up and being victims for the night, you know, things like that. So there's always a role for anybody who's interested. We just say, just reach out to your groups. That's available on the Land Search and Rescue website. And one of the group volunteer support officers will get back to you and we'll talk to you about how you can be more involved. And I think, how do women become tutors? So my journey as a tutor started when I was shoulder tapped. And this was probably before land search and rescue training was as big as it is now. And it was more, if you proved yourself, you'd be approached, and if you were able to commit, they would take you through training on how to be a trainer. So I was fortunate enough to do my 4098 assessment training with Land Search and Rescue. They covered all those costs. Nowadays, they actually have and sorry, this is Janelle's space, so I should probably let her speak to it. But nowadays, they do have a training program which Janelle has set up for the trainers. So Janelle, you can speak to that.
Yeah, so there is a process. If people are interested in becoming tutors, they can basically do an expression of interest. We keep a pretty good idea on where we've got gaps at the moment, because the last thing we want to do is recruit someone in and then not have opportunities for them to be able to tutor. And then there's a whole progression through tutoring skills. So there's, as Ali's talked about, there's assessor trainer, there's tutor training, and then we go through a sort of shadow second tutor, and then you become a lead tutor. So there is quite a process involved, but yeah, certainly encourage more females involved. That's probably one where we are behind on our statistics, and one I've been pushing.
Cool. And I'll just do one last question in the chat before we call it a night. What do the trainings look like? Yeah, really good question, actually. We probably should have covered that. We normally train, and it really depends on the area, either once a fortnight or once a month will be the field trainings. And then you'd usually have an incident management training as well, which is optional for the field team members who are looking at transitioning between both. So some areas will have 3 trainings a month and some will have 2 trainings a month. Some areas may only have 1 training a month, depending on how mature their training model is. And it really varies. Sometimes we do river rescue training. Sometimes we will have a presenter come and talk to us about dementia, because that seems to be something that's really up and coming in our field at the moment. And everything in between. We do have competencies that we need to adhere to within our trainings. So we often use our training nights as an opportunity to refresh skills and to sign off on some of those competencies. We also have the national trainings, which is where the program that Janelle's developed comes into place. And so then most of them are weekends. There are some evenings, particularly if it's able to be online. And those are those national competencies that you need to have before you can be signed off as a field member or as an incident management team member. And then the group competencies are either keeping the core competencies up to date until the next turnover, and the next time you have to redo or resit those courses. But they're great courses. The national courses are normally held in one area within the region, and all the regional groups within the region come in to partake in the training. And so you get to meet everyone from all walks of life, and they're really neat to be on. And you have some amazing tutors as well. So that gives us, sorry team, we've taken 6 minutes of your night, but if you have any questions, you can contact any of us through Amy, and we're more than happy to answer anything that you have. And if you are looking at joining Land Search and Rescue, then please go to our website, landsar.org.nz. Correct me if I'm wrong, Janelle. Excellent. And it's just on the About Us page. So we're always looking for more volunteers and some more awesome wahine. So come join us. And have a great night. Ka kite ana.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Kite, and from myself and from the rest of the women of our network, especially those here in New Zealand, I just want to say a big thank you to you guys for taking your evening tonight, especially Julie for your very touching and heartwarming story. I could feel it here, and I think it was something really special to share, and you can really sense that connection. So thank you to everybody who's both presented tonight and on other nights, as well as to everybody who's joined us and made it a really awesome experience to do this kind of panel session with volunteers for National Volunteer Week in June, as well as the 5 subsequent fortnightly ones. So thank you guys, much appreciated, and I'll send out a recording link in the next day or two. Ka kite.
Thanks, Amy. Love your work.
Thank you.